Even though EBO2, the anime's 25th collection in the One Piece trading card game, just released in Japan, people are already starting to talk about OP11, a fist of divine speed. We already knew some things about the upcoming set if you didn't see in one of our recent info videos, talking about Jinbei, Shirahoshi, and Blue Purple Luffy. In the last couple days though, there's been some new reveals of the other three leaders that are coming in this set. If you haven't heard by now, it's kind of been the talk of the week for the One Piece trading card game community. It is Blue Yellow Nami, Red Black Koby, and Purple Katakuri. Now, I've seen a lot of different takes, whether that's in tweet posts, Discord, YouTube videos, things of that nature, reacting and talking about the different leaders and the different combos. I've even watched some gameplay over all of these leaders and their proposed deck list before we get the rest of the OP11 set. There's been some overreactions and there's definitely been some underreactions as well. So in this video, I'm going to tell you all about these leaders, some of the stuff that you can start thinking about with these leaders, and then also my honest opinion about it. Another thing to note though, this is releasing in Japan on March 1st. We do know that from the different texts and posts and things like that, that this set is going to boost up Whole-Cake Island, Fishman Island type cards, as well as introducing sword typing, quote, featuring a host of powerful characters. Now, speaking of the sword category or typing, I'm going to start off with Koby. If you don't know what Koby is, he's a red, black, navy, and sword typing, so dual typing in there. Our first sword type anything within this game, right? We don't have any characters, we don't have any leaders, we don't have any event cards, stages, any of that stuff yet. Koby is the first. 4 life, 5,000 power. Koby has two different effects on this leader. The first one is that your sword type characters can attack characters the turn that they are played. The second effect, once per turn, when one of your navy type characters with an original power of 7,000 or less is removed from play by your opponent's effects, instead you may place 3 cards from your trash to the bottom of your deck in any order. So I'm just going to come out and say it. This is a better Sabo deck, unfortunately, OP05 Sabo being one of my favorite leaders of all time. Now, let's talk about some of the different things about the typing, about the different effects that Koby has, things of that nature. Navy has been an established typing since its color surged in OP02. Paramount War. It is to most people, and I think a lot of people would agree, the best typing that Black has available to it. And so Koby fitting that bill already is a pretty good sign for the leader. Already having one of the strongest bases in the game already, you also have a red pool that recently got stronger with Starter Deck 21. It's incredibly common in a lot of lists that we've seen since Starter Deck 21's release. A video will be coming out soon of decks using Starter Deck 21. I completely forgot to make that video. I think it released while I was on vacation, where cards like the Monkey D. Luffy or the Sanji are just generically good red cards. Not to mention as well that the EBO2 music events also give kind of a flexibility in your deck building if you want to move a little bit more towards a red version that utilizes cards like Goldie Roger or Silver's Rayleigh, two really good red boss monsters that we've seen in the game. Now, in terms of what I personally think of it and what I've seen so far, I feel like this deck is a lot like Smoker, where similar to Smoker, you're building up your trash like crazy with brand new Sengoku and things like that to not only be able to use for your leader effect, but also different things like Gecko, 7-cost Sengoku, Rebecca, some of the typical things that we see within Black decks. By the way, 7-cost Sengoku is an incredible card. Definitely, I think, put that in this Koby list. I think that I definitely think so. Now, thinking about that typing and the different color combo stuff, let's talk about that first leader effect that's literally a built-in Kurita Coliseum. Now, we've seen through Usopp decks, Rebecca decks, right, that Kurita Coliseum is a necessary part of the game plan and really allows those decks to shine in what they're trying to do, especially when controlling the board. If you don't know what Kurita Coliseum is, it's a stage card that allows your Dressrosa characters to attack other characters on the turn that they're played. If the translation is correct, and I'm going to say this about every leader, you know, if the translation is correct, these cards have been out for a little bit now. I would have imagined that somebody would have pointed out a mistranslation at this point, but that means every sword type character that can be in this deck is going to have that same effect on Kurita Coliseum, right? You don't have to activate Dawn or anything like that to be able to get them to attack characters. You don't have to play anything down. You don't have to use an activate main. It is a constant effect that is going to be present in this game. Okay, real quick, you're gonna see me in this different outfit because as I was editing that, the next day there were a lot of reveals for a lot of different cards that definitely need to be talked about in this video with these leaders, starting off with Koby. So just know that I've edited this to make sure you get my full exact thoughts on the leaders. Now, the new 8-cost Koby 9,000 power sword navy type character that was revealed has two different effects. One is an on play, up to one of your characters can attack one of your opponent's active characters this turn. And a when attacking, you may return 2 cards from your trash to the bottom of your deck in any order. Give up to one of your leader characters plus 1,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn. Just like I indicated, this is a sword type character, right? So this is going to be able to attack other characters on the turn that it is played. And if the translation for this card is correct, you're also going to be able to attack active characters with this guy if you choose that on the turn that it's played. The when attacking is also really good. Being able to get yourself to be 6,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn is such a good effect, right? Being kind of a permanent 6,000 power leader. I will say though, in terms of the Koby deck, right, or just black decks in general, you have to compete with viability with 8-cost Gecko, 7-cost Jax, 7-cost Sengoku. So deck space for this might be a little difficult, especially since it does not KO, right? I would say though that there is probably going to vie up some spots because it is navy and sword. Having 9,000 power Kurita Coliseum Rush and be able to attack active characters is super valuable within this deck. I see this being a very impactful card, but it may be impactful as like a 2 of, because I feel like Gecko is more valuable and, you know, deck space. Now going into the second one, which is much more applicable to what we can do for testing right now and theory crafting with this deck, is the survivability, right? Instead of being able to save only sword type characters, this once per turn is saving navy types. And again, we've already talked about how navy is an established and incredibly strong archetype that you can use in your deck. In comparison to OP05 Sabo, though, the translation says one of your characters, one of your navy type characters, instead of what Sabo says, if your character. In following those translations, again, assuming that they're correct, Koby can't do like that really niche double save that Sabo does, you know, with like Rob Lucci, right? It can't save them both at the same time. But we do know that this can save the navy characters from being removed from the field of play, right? We've started seeing more cards of being removed from the field, not just by KOing, but bottom decking is big, right? With Gravity Blade going on right now. We know that cards like Raigo, Anel, also like 9-cost Kaido, there's many instances that are going to proc this ability. And also a really good thing about when it's going to proc, this is any turn, right? The only clause in the translation that we have is once per turn. It's not opponent's turn, it's not your turn. This is any time within the game. So if your opponent decides to use an 8-cost Katakuri, right, being removed from play, you can bottom deck 3 cards from your trash in order to keep this on the field. If you happen to hit a Gravity Blade trigger, right, and you've got a Borsalino on the field, if they try to pop that Gravity Blade and bottom deck your Borsalino, you can just say, wait, hold on, let me just put 3 cards from my trash to the bottom of my deck, and you can get around it. There's so many times that we've seen only like your turn or opponent's turn type of effects like this, but this one is any time in the game. It's going to be really nice. You're even going to be able to counter like Black Hole, right? Because this is an effect on your leader. Your 4-cost Borsalino, for example, the Black Hole is not going to shut it off entirely unless they do like a double KO effect, which is a lot of Dawn and a lot of their turn. So you honestly probably aren't too mad at that. Speaking of of Black Hole, I kind of think that Koby is like a light counter to a deck like Blackbeard. Ever since OP10's release and Blackbeard gaining the new Kuzan, the 6-drop Liberation, it has been huge and dominant within the OP10 meta. And I really think it's no surprise that Bandai is printing a leader like this to kind of counter Blackbeard and kind of balance the meta a little bit. Sure, you don't necessarily have the swarm typing abilities that Blackbeard really struggles against, but again, we go back to the sword typing yet to be revealed. If there are enough red or black, I guess I should say, cards that are in the sword typing, that's going to be some really good access to characters that can automatically swing at the board of the Blackbeard, force them to give up resources within their hand, really kind of cripple them down and like really provide some problems. I mean, think about if like Blackbeard plays Jack, right? We know that sometimes Jack is an interesting tech card against Doflamingo. I don't really know if you continue to run it, but let's just keep the hypothetical. They use the Jack effect to KO one of your characters or maybe swing in a previous turn. If they happen to use the effect on the 8 Dawn turn, maybe their 8 Dawn curve, you're going to be at 9. You can go ahead, slap that Koby down, assuming that it's a sword typing, and immediately be able to battle with that Jack. Being able to kind of rush and really pin him down on a fast amount of time is one of the reasons that Blackbeard just like hard loses to different red decks like PRB Sanji that we did in that one tournament that we live streamed. Man, that was a nuts game. So you've kind of got like an inherent advantage in that, but with your leader effect, right? Unless they play like a 10 cost Blackbeard, they barely have any actual removal against you so long as you're being able to build up the trash. Now that may be difficult because maybe you won't get on play effects, right? You might not be able to get the on play effect of brand new. You're going to have to go first and play Sengoku on turn 1 to be able to draw cards and build up your trash, right? Or maybe you tech in different things like Shigan, right? To be able to build up your trash, or Finger Pistol, I think it's called. So there's like another big thing about Koby. I also kind of think that it swings a lot if for some reason Koby got like a 1-drop sword searcher. Okay, so we still could get like a 1-cost event searcher, right, for Navy in black, but we do have a 1-cost red sword type character that was revealed. Also Navy slash sword. So, I mean, I don't know the lore of sword as of yet. I'm not fully caught up, but it looks like there's a theme of Navy characters being sword. There's this Peacock that has 1k counter on it, 0 power on play. It's look at the top 5 cards, find a Navy card other than Peacock, place the rest of the bottom of your deck. It also has an activate main. You may trash this character, give up to one of your characters 1000 power for this turn. This is honestly super interesting in my opinion in terms of a searcher. This is, I think, one of the first searchers that we've had where you have 2 different effects, right? Not only are you trying to find a Navy type character, which is very important because you're not finding sword characters, you're finding Navy characters. Again, going with my idea that I just said a moment ago of I think there's a theme of all these Navy characters being sword characters as well. But after you do the searching, you can activate main and add to your trash in order to use for your leader effect, in order to use for the Koby secret rare effect, maybe combo with an 8-cost Gecko Moria. I wouldn't have thought that just a regular 1-cost look at the top 5, put the rest of the bottom of the deck kind of thing would be in the Koby deck because of Sengoku, because of brand new, right? Just being great kind of draw supporters that really find your pieces. But the fact that this has this activate main of trashing the character, you don't have to battle with it, you don't have to play 5 other characters to get rid of it. It adds like a whole new interesting depth into the early game for Koby. Now, Dofi and OP09, which I'm talking about OP09 because Doflamingo and some of these other decks don't really change in 10, and we have access to the information from TCG Matchmaking's ranked data, which I think is much better data than I can provide. Doflamingo has about a 60% win rate against Smoker and just barely a disadvantage against Rob Lucci at about a 47% win rate. I think because Koby is very similar to Smoker, but kind of also has this ability to battle different characters if it turns out to play sword characters could kind of meet in the middle of those two, right? Kind of be anywhere between like 53 to 55% win rate Doflamingo side, like a pretty close matchup. But again, because we don't really know anything about sword, that's still TBD. I think one of the reasons why I consider Koby to be a little bit more than Smoker is because it's kind of similar to Smoker in the essence that it doesn't have anything like what Rob Lucci does, where you mill your trash, you build up your trash. Both Smoker and Rob Lucci have a minusing one effect, but Rob Lucci's is much more valuable. And since Koby doesn't have trash building or minus oneing, it might have a hard time clearing out Swarm as fast as it wants to, especially if it doesn't decide to play sword type characters. Maybe the sword type characters are very underwhelming or things like that. But I don't know, like even if we get a vanilla type sword character, right? Wouldn't like a 6/8 or something like still be very valuable within the deck maybe? I don't know. Also, in order to use your leader effect, you have to hope that you can build the trash fast enough to keep your guys living longer than Doflamingo can, right? Doflamingo is going to swarm the board. Doflamingo is going to swing like crazy very, very quickly. Can you survive that long being a 4-life leader? Doflamingo loves preying on 4-life leaders. Talking about Enel. Enel is the deck that people are most looking at with EBO2's release and legality in the set. So how does it actually fare against that tier 1 menace? Well, Enel in OP09 holds a 48% and 41% win rate on Lucci and Smoker respectively. Now, since I personally lean Koby more towards Smoker, I think Koby has a pretty good shot to have a winning matchup against Enel. Even though I will admit the 10 cost Enel that it gets in the set is crazy, and it's actually a really, really good card and can present a lot of problems. I think you still have a shot to keep a winning matchup, especially being able to save Kuzan off of your Koby leader effect, right? Or even bring back a Kuzan onto the field that was trashed earlier, either by leader effect or battling or Raigo or whatever. You can bring it back with 7 cost Sengoku, forcing your Enel opponent to once again try to get rid of it, because Kuzan is like one of the best cards against Enel in terms of the Black Navy decks. While I was writing this script, one of my favorite Japanese YouTubers actually put out a video with the Koby and Enel matchup. I'll link it in the description below. It's actually a really, really cool match, and it was really, really close and can really show kind of what I'm talking about visually, and then also even showcase Enel a little bit, because you should be paying attention to Enel right now if you're heading into EBO2. Overall, with Koby, the first leader that I'm going to talk about, I think it's a really neat leader that's been added to the game. I don't think the leader's going to be crazy broken, right? It's not going to be like Sakazuki, hopefully, but it's definitely not going to be a slouch, similar to what Smoker is. Smoker is a viable leader in format, but it's definitely a little bit more rogue, I think. Like, it's not popular at all. It's not going to take a huge chunk of the meta share. You're going to see like one get in the top cut every so often. It's also unfair to give a full prediction on Koby though, since half of its typing and half of its leader effects we don't even know about. So make sure to subscribe for those sword reveals. We'll talk about these sword type characters when they come out and how it affects Koby. Now, the next leader that we're going to talk about is the purple Katakuri. So this is a mono color 5-life leader Katakuri, 5,000 power, having just the Big Mom Pirates typing. Only has 1 leader effect, right? The only leader we're talking about today that just has 1 leader effect, but it's a very interesting one. When attacking and when opponent attacks once per turn, you can don -1, and if you do, you look at the top card of your opponent's deck, then give this leader plus 1,000 power for this battle. Now, similarly to Koby, this leader effect is super nice because it can be played both on the offense and defense any turn of the game, except maybe your opponent's first turn, right? Because you can't swing on the, you know what I mean. Now, what we know in the Big Mom Pirates package is that the early game has great options in it, right? Of 3-cost Pudding, a card that has been basically non-existent since Red Purple Law's ban and has really been pushed out of relevancy though. It's definitely a card that you probably want to consider at least putting in your Katakuri deck. It's just the problem with Pudding is that it's so easy to remove. I mean, I'm talking about starter deck 17, 4-cost Bounce Law. I'm talking about 5-cost Nami and Enel blowing it up. You've got Shanks has Red Hawks. They still play those. Black Hole with Blackbeard, just easily take that away. You know, you look at Bonnie, and Bonnie uses leader effect to rest the pudding, and then they swing into it, and are you really going to counter out? Just essentially just about every single meta deck has something to be able to get rid of a 3-cost 4,000 power character. Now, if you're lucky enough though to have a 3-cost pudding and a 5-cost kid on the field, you can actually use the when attacking or when opponent attacks effect to be able to actually ramp, right? You put 1 Dawn back and you get 1 back from the Charlotte pudding, and then another Dawn back through the kid, which by the way is an active Dawn, putting 1 back, getting 2 in return. So that's kind of like a neat interaction that you can try to strive for. Right, Red Purple Law did the same thing. Also, there's some different stages of the game that being able to use and abuse the 2 and 6 cost Katakuri package that we previously got in, I think it was OP08. I'm putting them on screen. And then also the 9 cost Charlotte Linlin. It's going to be really good at those different stages, kind of mid-game and late game part of the game. Game. Now, especially when you talk about the late game with this leader effect, you're essentially guaranteed to be a 6k leader on both kind of offense and defense, right? You're on like a 10 Dawn turn, you play some stuff down, resting some Dawn, you go ahead, swing, you put 1 Dawn back, you're at 9, and you become a 6k leader for a battle. Then on the defense, when your opponent attacks you, if they swing at you for a nice little 5, you can go ahead, do that leader effect once again. You're at 8 Dawn total now on your field. You're a 6k leader for the battle. You get out of that. And then heading into your next turn, you're just going to bring 2 Dawn back, right? And you'll go right back to 10. The way that I currently visualize this deck is like extreme ramping in order to be able to use leader effects as much as possible, as fast as possible. We have different ramp cards that are Big Mom Pirates, such as the 3-cost event. I think it's called It's to Die For. I put it on screen. We also got the 4-cost Brûlé the 4-cost Brûlé blockers, say that 5 times fast. And then the 3-cost Perospero as well is another great one. We also know that we have Charlotte Pudding and Sanji, right? One of the new EBO2 SRs. And I don't know if I'm completely sold on it yet, because you only get like half of the value, at least in the normal stages of the game, because your leader effect is only Dawn -1 and you have to do 2 Dawn at the same time. It's not just 2 Dawn in a single turn. It's 2 at the same time. That means that you have to run different cards that do Dawn -2 or more, like Conquest of the Sea, right? Or the 9-drop Kaido. Okay, and when I was talking about how Katakuri needs to aggressively ramp in order to play and use their leader effect, here's another really cool effect. Newly revealed 10-cost Charlotte Linlin, 12,000 power. If your leader has the Big Mom Pirates type, this character gains Rush. I don't know what we're doing right now in the printing where every single 10-drop needs to have Rush, but we're doing it, I guess. But the big thing is the on opponent's attack with this character. Once per turn, Dawn -5. That's a lot. You may declare a cost. You reveal 1 card from the top of your opponent's deck. If that revealed card has the same cost as the declared cost, give up to one of your leaders plus 2,000 power during the turn. This is actually huge, right? We talked about with the Katakuri leader that you do your leader effect both on offense and defense, your attack and on opponent's attack. Being able to utilize this is so nice, right? Because you can choose the order of what you want to do. You can use the leader effect, look at that top card, and then on opponent's attack, you can do Dawn -5 to do the Charlotte Linlin, right? You know exactly what that card is, and so oh my gosh, look at that. You're now a 7,000 power leader, 8,000 power leader for the battle, 7,000 for the rest of the turn. And we'll get to in a moment why being 7,000 power is so good. It goes back to my point though with this Katakuri deck on how I feel you need to be like an extreme ramp, like Dawn revitalization kind of deck, because you're going to get to 10 as fast as possible, play this down, and then be able to do this cycle of essentially -6 every single turn, right? Obviously, I don't think there's a perfect combo to where you'd be able to do this every single turn, but you want to do it as many times as possible, as soon as possible. This is a great card. I definitely think a little bit higher on Katakuri because this is an incredible boss monster. This is great alongside the 9-drop Charlotte Linlin, but we still have plenty of reveals to do. But I do see that there is value in this card, right? Being able to replace itself on the draw and just being a good body in general. So like I do see something is kind of there, but I also think you have to include different other ramp cards like 4-cost on clay, right? Because again, like I said, I think you need to be a ramp deck and I think you need to get to 10. In terms of your matchup spreads, I don't think there's a great comparison to Katakuri like I feel like there is with Koby and Smoker, but it might be similar in essence to Red Purple Luffy in kind of its early stages of the game, right? Forcing itself to ramp in the vision that I see it. It could be entirely wrong. I'm sure there are many people that have different opinions on what this leader at this time before we get any OP11 reveals besides the leaders and some other scratches kind of feel. You probably still really struggle into some decks like Doflamingo, Bonnie, and Nami, right? Just really because you don't have like a super swarm function and the game plan is typically slower, something that those decks specifically love to prey on. But if the other OP11 leaders have good Doflamingo matchups, right, or even viable Doflamingo matchups, maybe those inherent buffs that you get just from indirectly in those other matchups make Dofi go away a little bit from that top spot, like less popular, still probably very viable, but just less of them that you can like dodge and go through. Maybe it's a matchup that you can take as a loss. Big Mom Pirates already has purple cards that were printed in OP08 that have available to it, but the page that I showed earlier specifically says that it's going to give huge boosts to the Whole Cake Island arc, which is Big Mom Pirates. So it's going to be really curious to see how deep the purple Big Mom Pirates package goes and if Katakuri like dives into it or if it has to go into the other just really good purple cards pool like the Bon Clay like I was talking about from EB01. Now let me take a drink before I really go on this yap fest of this leader. The new Nami leader has really been the talk of the town in the One Piece community. Let me just, as I did with the others, read you what it is, what it does before I give any opinions on it. This is a blue-yellow leader, specifically just Straw Hat Crew typing. It's a 4-life, 5,000 power blue-yellow leader. Has 2 different effects. During your turn, once per turn, when a card leaves life, you can trigger this. Draw 1 card if you have 7 or fewer cards in hand. That's the first effect. The second effect that you have is Dawn ×1 when opponent attacks once per turn. You may trash 1 card from your hand, give this leader plus 2,000 power for this turn. Different to the Katakuri, right, which was just a battle, Nami gives this power boost for an entire turn, right? On your opponent's first attack, you could just pitch a card and be a 7,000 power leader for the rest of the turn. But I think the biggest key on this leader is the first effect that we talked about. When a card leaves life, you can trigger this. Draw 1 card if you have 7 or fewer cards in hand during your turn, once per turn. That's for any reason a life card leaves your life. I'm talking like you're playing 6-cost Robin, right? Burning a life. Oh, a life card leaves. It doesn't matter if it's your life or your opponent's life. It just matters if it happens on your turn. The 6-cost Robin burns a life. Oh, look at that. I have 6 cards in hand. I'll draw 1 card. Even cards like 2-cost Hiyori, right? A very prevalent card that we've seen in some yellow decks. I'm thinking specifically Black Yellow Luffy. Also wasn't an NL for a long time. Is it still an NL though? I don't know actually. I think it's out now. Even with the 2-cost Hiyori, right? Even though you're not losing a life, you still have to take a life from your life area and put it in your hand. That is a card leaving the life area. Therefore, you can trigger and draw if you have 7 or fewer cards in hand, even though you're going to be putting a card right back. There's also the 6-cost Lucy, the 2-cost Sanji. Cards that even though you're not technically losing a life, if you just take it out, it works. And just like I mentioned with the Robin, this also procs for any time one of your swings hits your opponent's life, or maybe a burn effect happens on your opponent's life. The last couple sets, we've seen plenty of different things come into the meta that burn life. I'm talking like the OP9 Robin, the OP10 8-cost Kid, and even existing effects like the blue 6-cost promo Law. One card that I think more people should talk about, and I've seen some people talk about it, but I think more people should talk about, is 7-cost Lin from the Big Mom starter deck. Now think about this. On your, let's say, 8 Dawn turn, so then you can have 1 on leader for the defense to be able to use the plus 2000, which, man, we haven't even talked about that yet. You play down your 7-cost Lin, and your opponent has 2 options. They either burn a life, and, well, if you have 6-7 cards in hand, yes, you get to draw one, right? Because a life card left the life area at any point. Or what you do is you give them a life, and eventually that life is basically like a draw one at some point, right? Because it comes in my hand. Unless you're playing like a banish deck like Purple Yellow Robin, I guess. No matter what, it's basically a draw one for you, whether it's immediate or later in the game. The same thing can even be said for 5-cost Soul Pocus, right? That 5-cost event card, I think it's also from the starter deck. And it costs 2 less Dawn, but you're trading it because you don't have 1 less body, but it's the same concept. Also, speaking of these 7 or fewer cards, that's incredibly easy to manage. We already see decks like Boa Hancock, right, that recently had success in the Oceania finals, which I'm so mad that my EBO2 tier list video was recorded and posted before the Oceania finals, because dang, you all ripped me in the comments for putting Boa so low. What was I to do? Anyways, I'd move Boa up a little bit after that performance if I had to repost it. Boa just has to balance like, what, 5 or less cards in hand to be able to get the draw, and they do a lot of bouncing in that deck. Just watch any one of Real Joshua's like live streams or, you know, commentary videos or whatever about Boa lately. He's been all about Boa. This deck also has really nice synergy with newly made cards, right? In EBO2, we got the Vivi. Vivi, I think, was kind of like the immediate attachment onto the Nami, like one of the first things people thought of. Vivi, if you do not know, is a 3-cost blue Alabasta type 1k counter, 4000 power, with an on play that if your leader is multicolored and you have 5 or less cards in hand, just draw 2 cards. So think about having 6 cards in hand, right? You go ahead, play the Vivi down, the Vivi with the on play, you have 5 cards in your hand, you get to just draw 2 cards. It's not draw 2, trash 1, right? It's not trash 1, draw 2. It is just a straight up draw 2. You go up to 7 in hand. If you got 1 Dawn on leader, you go ahead and swing 6 at life. If it hits, you draw 1 because you have 7 or less cards in hand. Now you have 8 cards. That's crazy. That's a pretty doggone good turn. And speaking of which, because you have an excess amount of cards in your hand, your Dawn ×1 when opponent attacks once per turn of trashing a card, getting plus 2000 for the entire freaking turn, it synergizes so well with the decks and the builds that we're already seeing already, right? Before we even get the OP11 set reveals. Because if you just draw cards, you could just trash one of them that you don't want, hand filtering, to then be able later in turns to continue drawing from the first part of your leader effect. Unlike OP09 Robin or OP01 Doflamingo, you don't have any restrictions of your leader that you can use for this card off of your leader effect. It could literally be anything. It can be something that has a trigger. It could be an event card. It could be a, what's a random typing in blue, East blue card, I don't know. So like that already in itself is just so good, right? One of the reasons that Black Yellow Luffy is so successful into Doflamingo is because of its ability to gain so much power, right, that goes through the turns, right? Being a 9,000 power leader for so many turns in the game, 7,000, 9,000, it forces decks like Doflamingo to spend a lot of Dawn just to be able to swing at it. And the more Dawn that they use in order to swing at your leader, that's less characters that they're putting on the field. So being able to pitch any card for 2,000 worth of counter for the entire opponent's turn, and then be able to draw that right back in the next turn to use again is so good, right? We're primarily in a 5,000 power leader format, and so 7,000 power is a huge number in my opinion, especially for a lot of these like mid-range, low to the ground swarm decks. There's also plenty of other cards that I've seen in some of these pre-day one builds. I'm talking like Slave Arrow, a really nice event. Slave Arrow, if you do not know, because it's not popular really in the meta at all, wouldn't surprise me if you didn't know it, is a 1-cost counter event. With it, you can return one of your characters with a cost of 2 or higher to the owner's hand. And if you do, you give up to one of your leader characters plus 4,000 in the battle. Think about earlier, like I said, you know, playing down a 2-cost Hiyori, right? That's a 2k counter card that's very valuable in your hand for counter, but it allows you to proc your leader effects, so it's valuable in itself. Slave Arrow gives you the ability to put that back in your hand, give you 4,000 power for that battle when you're already a 7,000 power leader, and then potentially either use your leader effect again by playing the Hiyori down or something, or just pitching it off of counter as a 2k. Slave Arrow, in my opinion, is a really interesting idea within the deck, and I've only heard a couple people talk about it. Well, up to this point, maybe by the time this video comes out, somebody already has a video or something like that, but you know what I mean. You can also pick up things like 2-cost Nojiko, which I think has been another one of the like instant connections that people are making. And if you don't know what Nojiko is, because once again, it's not prevalent in the meta at all, and it hasn't been prevalent in a while. I think the last time it was Nami, the OP03 deck. It's a 2-cost, 0-power, 1k counter character that says on play, put up to one of your opponent's characters of 5 or less back into the owner's hand. It's also leader locked on Nami. You can only get this on play effect if your leader is Nami, which is why like you don't see it ever. It's super worthy in evaluating what deck spots you maybe want to put in blue, yellow Nami, especially because 5 costs are so valuable within the game right now, right? Being able to remove things in certain matchups can really be over for a lot of opponents, right? Just put it back in hand, you can't have it on the field. You've kind of got this like very good control aspect to you almost, because using a 2-cost character to bounce a 5-cost character is nuts value. Like there's a reason that it was played in OP03 Nami at one point before OP07 released and gave us the Kuja Pirates package. Now, I am though really curious to see the rest of the OP11 reveals for this deck, especially because we know that we have 2 Straw Hat blue leaders, right? The blue purple Luffy and also now the blue yellow Nami. I think it's really a safe assumption that we're going to be gaining more blue Straw Hat support in this set, right? We already have some great options now that have been made in like different starter decks, EBO1, some promos, right? We got a whole slew of Straw Hat promos with that like blue Luffy leader, mono blue, but I definitely could expect to see more. All right, so let's talk about the Nami. So we knew that this Nami was coming because the card was shown, but the little text and stuff was blurred out, so we didn't know anything really about it. Besides, it was a 5-cost, 6,000 power blue Nami. But this Nami is a blocker. It has an on-play effect of if your leader is multicolored, you can draw 3 cards and place 2 from your hand at the top or bottom of your deck in any order. Couple different things in here. One, really nice mid-range that draws cards, right? I had literally just mentioned like with the little bodies doing it, and so 5-cost Nami being in this mix is so nice, right? And is able to draw as well. So maybe you don't need to play another Vivi. Maybe you don't need to play another 2k on the ground in that Hiyori. And choosing whether or not you want to put those cards from your hand, those 2 cards at the top or bottom, give a lot of really good depth in my opinion. Although this is a net 0 card, you have a 6,000 power blocker on the field, and we know how valuable that is, right, with Doflamingo's Boa Hancock. This is basically like a Boa Hancock. You just have +1 cost, a little bit of counter on you, and you get to draw an extra card, right? I think you probably include this in your Nami decks as well as maybe this next card. And plus being a 5 cost, unless you're doing the Nami mirror with Nojiko's, it's going to be really interesting. Sanji. So Sanji is blue, 6 cost, 7,000 power. It's a Vinsmoke family and Straw Hat Crew. So those of you that really love Reiju, you can also potentially put this in Reiju if you want. I don't know if it really fits in Reiju, but just putting that out there. When this character is KO'd by an opponent's effect, you can look at the top 5 cards of your deck, play up to 1 character with a type Straw Hat Crew with the cost of 5 or less on the field. Then place the rest of the cards at the bottom of your deck in any order. Also has an on-play effect of returning a character with an original cost of 5,000 power or less to the owner's hand. So this I feel like is a solid card, right? You being a 7,000 power character, you're going to have to beat this in battle, right? Or use some sort of like black hole, get rid of its effect, because if you're primarily playing a Straw Hat Crew type deck, this KO by effect, it's going to look at that top 5 and be able to play that down. Now, if you have good manipulation, right, with that 5 cost Nami, you may know what the top card is of your deck. Maybe it is a Straw Hat. You know, you didn't do any draw from your leader effect earlier, or maybe you did. That would still leave 1 more card left on top, just thinking about it. And so there are situations to where you can guarantee, essentially, or put yourself in situations to guarantee that you're going to find something and play something off of this Sanji. Being able to also return a 5,000 or less character to the owner's hand is really nice, right? For the Doflamingo matchup. Gotta say it again. And it also says original power, right? So even cards like Jesus Burgess, right, who start at 5,000 power, and even when this card is going to be played, maybe you're higher than that. No matter what power you are at that time, if your original on the listed part of the card is 5,000 power, you get put back into your opponent's hand. Now, it isn't on play, so maybe Burgess wasn't a great example, because is Blackbeard going to let you do that? I don't know, but you know what I mean. I'm wondering if this would be more viable in the purple-blue Luffy rather than the yellow-blue Nami, right? Because I think that 6 cost Sanji is probably more fitting in that deck, because I think in the blue-purple Luffy, you're probably playing more Straw Hats than the Nami. Nami, I kind of see it a lot similarly to like Kid, where you can play like the 8-drop Useless Captain Kid, the 6-drop Robin, right? The 7 cost the Lin Lin. So you have a lot of not Straw Hat Crew type characters. So how many of them do you actually have in the deck is really going to impact of whether or not you put this card in your deck. But blue purple Luffy stonks. And then we also got our second secret rare in the set, the final card that you're going to see me in the blue shirt for. Monkey D. Luffy, blue, 8 cost, 8,000 power Straw Hat Crew secret rare. Does just have rush. There's no conditions. It just has rush. Rush, 8,000 power. When attacking, you may discard 1 card from your hand, return up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less to the owner's hand, then give a rested Dawn to your leader or character. This could be pretty nice for Nami, I feel like, right? Being able on an 8 Dawn turn to still give a rested leader to your Nami leader can be really nice. And then also just bouncing 4 costs back is really good in a couple different matchups, right? Like Rebecca is a really good blocker in Koby, Smoker, Lucci, Borsalino is valuable, any of the 4 drops in Doflamingo, and even stuff like Shanks, right? Shanks playing a lot of Lucky Roo lately. So I do see this as kind of a cheeky card. I'm not sure how much you do, but being an 8,000 power rush character does have a lot of value to surprise your opponent on the turn that it's played. One of the issues that I think I have with this deck, though, at least in the pre-OP11 release versions, like what we're talking about right now, at the time of this recording, the day is February 29th, 2025, is that there's a lot of decks that people are talking about within your deck that are not swinging at all, right? We already talked about Hiyori, we talked about Nojiko, we talked about Vivi. So you, in my eyes and in my thoughts, you have to play a lot of like mid-range type characters to play a support character down for turn, and also kind of a little bit bigger of a character, right? I'm talking like 5 to 7 range in terms of the cost, because you also need to think about attaching 1 Dawn to leader, so you can use the broken leader effect on opponent's attack, right? If you're kind of slow in controlling the swarm, do you just get overwhelmed quickly when you just skip a beat, right? Like Blackbeard's a really good example into Doflamingo. I don't think it's going to be as polarizing, but like Blackbeard, in order to beat Doflamingo, like on curve, has to open .Q, play Von Augur on 5, and then play Jack on 7. And that's just hoping Doflamingo doesn't find Gravity Blade, right? Maybe whiffs a leader effect. But you know what I mean? Like if you miss a beat or you're just a slower deck, is that going to be a problem? You can draw cards, sure, and you can keep drawing and doing stuff, but when they swarm it so fast, you're gonna run out of cards eventually, right? Especially when you're playing bodies down like Zeus, right? Zeus is basically the power crept Thunderbolt that we talked about in our Bandai info video from not too long ago. Just a really, really good card. Again, it's like a Thunderbolt. Basically, trash one of your own life, KO a 5,000 power character, and it's a character on the field that you can play. 2 cost, by the way, so you can pick it up with Slave Arrow. Like, you're going to be taking your own life to proc your leader effect. So I guess it's like, how long does that last? You're also a 4-life leader, like I said earlier. Doflamingo preys on 4-life leaders. And it's not like you're like Black Hill Luffy, where you can just throw a bunch of dudes up in life, right, and actually be like an 8-life leader. Or you're like Enel, where you have so many different, like, recurring life effects. And also, like, what does the black matchup look like? Sure, you could be burning life or getting the draw and things like that, but does it really matter if your stuff doesn't stick on the field? Right? Like, if you have to play a Jozu down and you have to play like 8-cost Kid down to be able to swing at things, are they gonna let it stay alive before they even swing? Like, Rob Lucci is super consistent at KOing things. Koby might be consistent at KOing things. Smoker is consistent at KOing things. They've got Ice Age, for crying out loud. Tempest Kick. I mean, Rob Lucci in itself, in especially OP09, has a pretty good spread to anything not Blackbeard, BY Luffy, or Nami. Like I've said for the other leaders, it's just really all going to depend on what comes out in the rest of OP11 when we have the reveals. But out of the 6 leaders, I do personally think that Nami is the strongest out of the 6. And again, we still don't really know anything about the set. We just know some of the leaders, some of the typings that are going to be in the set, and some assumptions we've made along the way. I think Koby personally has a spot within the meta. Katakuri, it really just depends on what the Big Mom Pirates package is, I feel like. Blue-purple Luffy as well. Like, going back to that guy, I think he's going to be a good leader. I think it's going to be really interesting what the blue straw hats are. I think that's kind of the key in on what this set could be like. I mean, we got the purple straw hat starter deck, right? That has Luffy Taro, that has Sangoro, that has Zorojuro, which are already great and seems to be like a really cool leader. But is it going to work better than like red purple Luffy is the question. And I'm not fully convinced as of yet. I think it's going to be good and I think it's going to have its place, but it's just going to be really interesting to see what comes out. But we haven't even had the EBO2 events yet, because that is being waited for the Japan finals happening in a couple weeks. We will cover that on the channel with unique English commentary, not affiliated with Bandai, just getting my own practice in as always. And if you want to see some openings of EBO2, we are going to be doing a live stream soon where I'm going to be opening up all of these boxes, some courtesy to a sponsor, and then also I bought some. So that's going to be all for me. Let me know your thoughts. Let's have some conversation down in the comments below about these different leaders. I'm always up for conversation. And also, I just want to say, I wrote a whole script for this. I don't know if you guys could tell, but I was like basically reading from a script in this videos. I don't script any of my videos. I just ad-lib and I just let it go, right? I just yap and I just talk. But this is one of the like first videos that I've ever scripted. So let me know how you thought about this video in the future. It did take a little bit to script this video, which is why I'm kind of like a day behind in a sense, but it's going to be fun. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, subscribe for more on the channel, especially for future format stuff. And by future format, I mean Eastern format. But I'll see you in the next video. Thank you again so much for watching.